Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL round 24 betting preview. In this video, every single week, I go through all the upcoming games, go through who I think is going to win and why, what I'm considering betting in each of these games, what the odds are, what the odds have been for their previous matchups, who's been winning, who's been covering, what the total points line has been, have they been going over, under, and any other betting trends that apply to these matchups with the main objective to help you make money betting like I've been able to do for the past 12 years full time. Before we get into this weekend's matches though, just want to quickly recap what happened in round 23. Very interesting round overall. Of the 8 games, 5 of them went over the total points line. So another round for the over. Also, last weekend, the away sides covered the spread in 5 of the 8 games. They also won 6 of the 8. The only 2 home teams to win were the Redcliffe Dolphins and the Newcastle Knights. So both games on the Sunday. Underdogs covered the spread in 5 of the 8 games, and 2 underdogs won their games outright. They were the Sharks against the Titans, winning 44-0, and then the Broncos beating the Cowboys 42-18. That means overall in the season, that gives the underdogs another little boost. Overall in the season, they've covered 98 games to 74 games covered by the favorites so far this season. All the tools I use to make my decisions betting on the NRL are from the Bet Finders. I'll put the link so you can use them in the description underneath this video, where you can view the ATS records, the total points betting records, plus go through and analyze the games. So when we're analyzing games, we're using the BetFinder tools, analyzing the stats on how teams compare in attack and defense and their overall numbers, where they stack up against each other in the league. So instead of, just relying on a few basic stats or, how they performed last week and just hoping they do something similar again, you're able to see how teams match up and actually approach it from more like a coaching perspective. And before putting a bet on a game, you're considering, how do I think this game's actually going to be played? Do I think it's going to be a more attacking or more defensive game? Where are team strengths? Are both teams concede a lot of meters up the middle, and so on and so forth? And then you can justify your decisions based on that. Then there's all the tools for looking at try scorers, how key players in and out are going to affect their lineups. Like over 20 different tools that I use to go through and analyze these matches. And in this video, my main goal is just to summarize that information for you, so you can make good betting decisions. But definitely check that out if you're interested in winning every season on the NRL. We only have 4 rounds left now before we go into finals. So let's get started with this weekend's games. On Thursday night, really, really good game. These sides haven't met since round 1, and that is the Panthers at home to the Melbourne Storm. Penrith, 5.5-point favorites. There's been a little bit of money for the Storm since yesterday. These lines are all based off on Monday odds, and the Panthers are down to -4.5 now as it currently stands. They wouldn't say lucky, but they put in a really good few minutes at the end of the game against Parramatta to get over the line there by 2 points. And then the Melbourne Storm comfortably took care of the Rabbitohs in the Thursday night game. Storm come into this on extended rest. However, they are on back-to-back road games, so not really an ideal situation for Melbourne. Penrith do have a pretty good record in this matchup, winning and covering 5 of the past 7 versus Melbourne. This is a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a defensive-sided game. I do think it's going to be slightly close. How I'm looking at playing this game from a betting perspective, knowing that the home team has been really successful and Penrith have been really successful in this matchup. The 2 things I'm looking at, I'm going to look for a Panthers line coming down to a -3.5. See if we can get a slightly lower number. If you look, the last time they met at this venue was round 23 last season, and Penrith were 13.5-point favorites. Pretty big difference since that meeting. But looking for a -3.5 on Penrith. The other way I'm considering playing, because I do think it's going to be a close, low-scoring game, is taking Penrith at the plus. I'm looking for a +4.5, +6.5, and then looking at an under and looking for a high total over the 50s, as I feel like both of those sides will hit So they're the two angles I'm considering. Also do consider the either side 1 to 12 option. Don't really see either side winning this game by a blowout margin. That try bet option based on how these teams have been performing and winning their games this year. Most of them haven't really been winning by big margins. I'll show you here in a second the margin records so far. This is another tool here inside the bet finders. And if we look at the Melbourne Storm, their wins this season, 11 have come by the 1 to 12 margin, only 5 by the 13 plus margin. And for the Penrith Panthers, 10 wins by 1 to 12 and 5 by 13 plus. So for two sides sitting at the top of the ladder, they haven't been winning their games by big margins. When you compare that teams to, like, for example, the Broncos, 7 of their 9 wins have been by 13 plus. Even the Bulldogs and Sharks, at least half or even more than half of their wins have been by 13 plus. Yet these top sides, majority of their wins have been by those small margins. So these are some of the things that are worthwhile checking out before you go in and bet on the games. But that's how I'm looking at playing the Thursday night game. Then on to Friday night, a couple of big favorites in both of these games. Firstly, Manly take on the Warriors. The Seagulls, $1.17 minus 14.5, total at 53.5 for this game. Manly have covered the past 5 versus the Warriors. As you can see here, they've won 3 of those. And then the latest matchup, which was round 6 this year over in New Zealand, ended in a draw, 22 points all. Also, for this matchup, 11 of the past 12 head-to-head have gone over the total points line, suggesting that the majority of their games have been high scoring. Manly come into this game winning 4 of their past 5. They put up 46 points last week, and they have scored 30 plus points in their past 4. And then the Warriors had a really high scoring game last week against the Dolphins. However, they have lost 4 of their past 5 leading into this. 2 ways I'm looking at playing this game is definitely interested in the overs. The total at 53.5, I do think is a touch high, but wouldn't surprise me to see it go over. I think the better way of playing it is looking at the Seagulls team total to go over. The other way to play it is I'm pretty confident Manly win this game. So if we're looking at Manly into an over, we could take the Seagulls on the money line or minus 3.5, minus 5.5, and then that'll allow us to buy that total down to the mid 40s. And I feel like those 2 options will definitely hit us. I do think it's going to be a high scoring game. Thing you got to be careful of is when there's these big trends towards a certain way, like for example, the over in this case, the line has been massively increased from 41.5 in their meeting earlier this season to 53.5 for this weekend's game. So definitely just be slightly cautious of that, but all signs point to this being a really high scoring game. The slight concern with like taking over 53.5 is just due to the fact that even though these sides, and especially Manly, have been putting up plenty of points lately, they're both top 8 defensive sides as well. So when you have that factor, you don't have a really poor defensive side, can, slow the scoring down a little bit. And that's why I'd be more so looking at buying it down slightly, as I still do think it's going to be a fairly high scoring game. Then we have the Roosters versus Eels on the later game. Roosters come into this matchup off the bye, and then Parramatta come into this game off was pretty much a heartbreaking defeat for them last week when they, they thought they had the game won against Penrith. However, did end up letting it slip. They were going for 2 in a row. Now they face the Roosters, so another tough test. They go from Panthers to the Roosters. Roosters have a really good record against them, winning and covering 5 of the past 6. Interestingly, they've only been small favorites in the previous 3 games, yet we're getting minus 16.5. For the most part, I really try and stay away. If you've been watching any of the videos throughout the season, like every week, and we've got, a double-digit favorite, I'll tell you guys pretty much to avoid it. And whenever I have said, this team should cover that spread for the most part, they have. This is one where I feel like the Roosters can cover. I feel like coming into this game, the Roosters don't come out flat. They'll rack up a score here. Roosters are really good at scoring on the edges. Parramatta are really poor at defending the edges. So Sydney Roosters should rack up a total in this game. I'd be looking at them at the minus 16.5, see if we get it slightly lower down to a 15 or even 14, to see what the market does. There could be some, resistance. Like the Eels haven't been bad the past 2 weeks. They won against the Warriors and then they nearly beat Penrith last week. I feel like there could be a little bit of movement back towards the Eels. Then you can definitely look at the Roosters team total. The Roosters are the number one attacking side. They're averaging over 30 points a game, score the most tries, score the most first half points, going against a Parramatta side who concede the second most points a game at just over 29 points. Looking through their recent meetings, the Roosters scored 28, 34, 28 across those past three over the past two seasons. And they only last met in round 15, and the Roosters put up 28 points in that. Compared to that game just back in round 15, the Eels are a slightly weaker side on paper here. And also the Roosters, it's an important game they don't drop this to make sure they maintain their spot inside the top four. So they should definitely get over the line and win comfortably. Bulldogs versus Dolphins. The Bulldogs, 5.5 point favorites, total at 48.5. So a point lower than their last meeting, which did go under 45 total points scored. And the Bulldogs won that game as underdogs by 1 point. So a bit of a switch around in the odds since that meeting, which was round 22 last season. Bulldogs come into this game in really, really good form. They've now won 8 of their past 10 games. Big win last week against the Dragons. And the only games they've dropped during their last 10 was a 2-point loss to the Cowboys and a loss against informed Roosters. Dolphins coming off a golden point win last week against the Warriors. And then aside from that, they lost their 3 games prior, but did play the Panthers and the Roosters during that time. Do think the Bulldogs win this game. Not super comfortable laying 5.5 points about them though. How I think we should bet on this game to be profitable is taking the Bulldogs just on the money line. I think they do win. They're the better side, more to play for, and should get over the line, especially at home. Also, would err on the side of this game being slightly lower scoring. Total at 48.5. Bulldogs defensively, as we've spoken about all season, are very, very good. They are currently, as it stands, the number 2 ranked defensive side in points conceded. They also concede the most meters per point. So that just gives you another indication on how strong they are defensively. Also concede the most line breaks. Now, Redcliffe are a really good attacking side. They're top 4 in majority of attacking stats, but we've seen Bulldogs are able to limit opponents who are good attacking sides. Obviously, the issue is just can the Bulldogs continue putting up points? And that's something they've actually improved on in recent times. They put up 28 against the Dragons, 22 against the Raiders, 41 against the Broncos. And they're not as winning as many of these like 12 to 14 kind of grinding it out games. But I do think they get over the line, more so leaning towards the money line in this matchup as opposed to laying the 5.5 points. The other option for slightly more value is the Bulldogs at the 1 to 12 point margin, as generally this season the Dolphins haven't been losing games by that 13 plus. Of their 10 losses, 7 have come by the 1 to 12 margin. Following game on Saturday, the Cowboys at home again to the Raiders. Cowboys minus 6.5 total at 50.5. Firstly, with the total, 6 of the past 7 between these sides have gone under the total points line, but everything about these sides and about how they're playing at the moment pushes you more so towards the over. So I'm not really keen on that trend. Both sides are bottom 6 defensive sides, and then the Cowboys are the 5th ranked attacking side in the league. Raiders, obviously they're not ranked high in attacking numbers. However, they did put up 24 points last week, 18 the week before, and 32 in their game before that. So they haven't been playing poorly in attack. However, they have only won 2 of their past 8 games. Those wins against the Rabbitohs and New Zealand Warriors. Firstly, this is a really important game for the Cowboys to be winning after they dropped that game last week against the Broncos. They now sit in 7th place. If they do drop this game, does start to put their position in the top 8 at risk. It's a good situation for them though. They're in back-to-back home games, playing a side they have a really good record against. They've won the past 5 and covered 6 of the past 7. And the Raiders are out of form. Cowboys should bounce back. Minus 6.5 is a fairly big line. I can see the Raiders kind of hanging around a little bit. If I had to pick a side, I'd lean towards the 6.5, but for it to be a bet, I'd want minus 5.5. Also, I feel like the other way and probably the better way of playing this game is taking the Cowboys on the money line into the over and buy that over down to 42.5 range. And all the betting decisions I literally make, obviously I'm recording this on Tuesday, all those decisions that I make, I lock in on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Once, team lists are out, monitoring how teams have been performing and we lock in those final decisions, wait for some odds movement in our favor to get the best possible odds for the selection. So, and I post all those plays in the bet finals, which you can access in the description. But with this game, yeah, I like interested in the overs and also the Cowboys to be winning. This is a really, really important game for them. The only thing that kind of goes against that is the underdog has covered the past 5 in this matchup. Interestingly, the Cowboys have been the underdog in 4 of those 5 games. However, they're a try favorite this time around. Last game on Saturday night, the Tigers versus the Rabbitohs. This is a really, really ugly game. You have 15th versus 17th on the ladder. Neither side really have any thing to play for other than trying to avoid the wooden spoon, which the Tigers really can't do now. The Eels got that game a couple of weeks ago. Looking at this matchup, like there's plenty of games on that you never need to actually force a bet in a game. And, whether you're just betting on the NRL or multiple sports, it's always best to pick the spots where you want to bet, where you feel like you have the most edge. And a lot of the time, these games where, it's kind of a dead rubber, teams are playing for pride, you don't need to force a bet into those games. This matchup, there is a way that I am slightly interested in playing it. And that is with the Tigers being underdogs here. They're plus 6.5, $2.77 on the money line. And we have a 52.5 point total. I am slightly interested in the Tigers team total to go over. Looking through these teams' recent forms, the Tigers put up 18 points last week against the Knights, who are one of the better defensive sides in the league. Then they had 30 points against the Cowboys, 16 against the Warriors, and only back in round 20 when they last met, the Tigers put up 28 points against the Rabbitohs. So with this kind of form they're in, I do think they can score about 4 tries in this game and potentially go over their team total. I also can see them hanging around a little bit in this game. The home team has a really good record, covering 12 of the past 13 and winning 9 of the past 12. And they only lost by 14 points back in round 20. Now they're at home and they're playing slightly better than they were leading in. And the Rabbitohs were playing a lot better when these sides met back in round 20. The Rabbitohs haven't won a game since that meeting. They've lost their past 3. And the major issue with the Rabbitohs is that their attacks just fallen off a cliff. They were going from scoring around the 28 to 30 points a game all the way down to 12, 6, and 16 across their past 3. So big drop off. That gives the Tigers a chance. Whether they turn up or not is the question. Obviously, as I said off the top, this game, I'm not 100% sure if I want to even bet into it, but those are the ways I think that it's going to play out. On to the Sunday games, Dragons versus Titans. Dragons, important game for them, sitting just outside the top 8. They're 5.5 point favorites, total at 50.5. Titans coming off a really poor performance last week, losing 44-0 against the Cronulla Sharks. That was off there, what you could kind of consider their grand final game against the Broncos, where they won 46-18. Did talk about that in the game, in the preview from last week, that Titans shouldn't be favorite. Sharks are a big chance of winning that game. And whenever teams have those kind of performances where, they have so much motivation to just win that game and they put up a performance like that, there's always that letdown the following week. And that's what eventuated there. They potentially can bounce back here against the Dragons. However, it's not going to be easy. They're on the road. Dragons have a really good record against them, winning and covering 3 of the past 4. They met in round 1 and the Dragons won 28 points to 4. Lines pretty much flipped. Titans were 5.5 point favorites there. They're now 5.5 point underdogs this time around. 7 of the past 9 between these sides have gone under the total points line. Can see this game being like a fairly close game and a little bit of a grind. Be leaning towards the under of the 50.5 and also be looking at either side 1 to 12, but more so the Dragons to be winning if I had to pick a side as well. Just with that extra motivation, I feel like there'll be a lot of pressure on the Titans to perform. Generally, when teams have a performance like the Titans did last week, there's a lot of pressure on them to come out and perform, but I don't think that's going to be absolutely the case because the Titans aren't one of the real teams like the media really get a hold of if they have a bad performance. So I don't think there's as much pressure on the Titans, and the Dragons should be able to get away with this game, but I think they kind of win it by that 4 to 8 points. Do think the line at -5.5 is pretty much spot on, which means I don't want to take, either side on that line, but do like the Dragons to win, maybe the 1 to 12, and also the under of the 50.5. So there's a few ways to play it there. 7 of the past 9 between these two sides have gone under the total points line as well. Then the final game of the round, the Sharks at home to the Knights. Cronulla, 8.5-point favorites, total 48.5 points. 4 of the past 5 between these two sides have gone under the total points line. Last time they met, it was 45.5, which was round 26 last season. The Knights were at home in that game. When they last met in Cronulla, you got to go back to 2022, so quite a while ago, and the total was only 37.5. So you don't get a good correlated line for that matchup. Generally, when we're talking about previous matchups and seeing what the line movement has been since that last matchup, you really want to look at the past 2 seasons. Sometimes teams, only meet once per season. And so you can kind of get a gist of it overall across the seasons. However, that isn't the case with these sides as they do meet twice per year. Cronulla should be winning this game. Another side that's in this boat of trying to make sure they maintain a top 4 spot. They should definitely be winning this game. They currently sit in 4th. They're a game clear of the Bulldogs. Can't afford to drop this game. They do have Manly coming up as well, who are one of those sides on the fringe of the top 4. So Sharks to get the win. -8.5. This is a tricky one. I feel like it's just over the threshold where I'd be willing to play it. Would definitely put it this way. Sharks -5.5 would definitely be a bet in this game. -8.5 is just pushing where I feel like there's just not enough value in that number, but definitely do like the Sharks to be winning. Newcastle's form leading in. They've only won 1 of their past 4, which was against West Tigers last week, losing games to Manly, Brisbane, and Penrith. And the Sharks coming into this off the back of back-to-back wins and starting to look like they're regaining their earlier season form. Obviously, Sharks at around the $1.37, $1.40 mark. They're not a great deal of value in that price point. So I'll be looking at other ways to pair up the Sharks to be winning this game, or be looking just for an alternate line. We look through their season stats as well. One of the other reasons why I feel like the Sharks win this game is because one of the biggest issues Cronulla have had this season is their first halves, and particularly their first 20 minutes. They concede the 3rd most points in first halves overall. However, Newcastle are ranked 3rd last in points for in first halves this season. So they're hardly a team that can capitalize on it. And if the Sharks just start the game neutral or better than neutral like they did last week, then they should go on and win this game fairly comfortably. So we'll just be monitoring the line. Obviously, this game's not until Sunday afternoon, so we've got plenty of time between now and then to see what this market does to secure the best price on the Sharks, whether that be on the line or on the money line. So quickly recap. So Panthers versus Storm Thursday night. Like the Panthers, we're looking for a -3.5 for this game. Then Seagulls versus Warriors, like Manly to be winning. Also interested in the over, but want a better number. Roosters, Eels, like the Roosters -16.5, or Roosters team total to go over. Bulldogs, Dolphins, like the Bulldogs on the money line, not so much on the handicap. Cowboys versus Raiders. Also another game where I like the Cowboys more so on the money line. I feel like this line is just a couple of points too high. And then Tigers, Rabbitohs, interested in the Tigers at the +6.5, or Tigers team total to go over. Dragons, Titans, think the Dragons win this game at home to keep their season alive. And then the Sharks should beat the Knights. And looking for a better handicap that's down towards the converted try number as opposed to nearing on double digits for that last game. If you're following along with the selections, good luck. If you want to use the tools to research games, check out the bet finds in the description. That's where you can also get access to all my bets every single week and every single day, including the USA sports. Right now, we're in the middle of baseball season, and American football season starts in just a few weeks. Already underway with the preseason, but I give you access to all the tools that I've used for the past 12 years now to make money betting on sports every single year. The reason why I've done this is to help more people make money betting. See so many people like trying to make this work, trying to figure things out. And, it's like trying to get that thing to click to where it's just not working. A lot of the issue is, if we break it down, there's kind of just only a few things that you need to get really, really good at in order to win. Firstly, you need to be able to have access to information to research games. The reason people lose money betting on NRL specifically is because they're making decisions based on just their prior knowledge of teams, what they hear in the media or on social media. That kind of stuff is going to result in you losing money because the betting companies know which way the public's going to go every single week, and they set traps for you to do that. So without being able to research, you're just pretty much just guessing effectively, and you're going to get some right, but you're going to get more wrong, and it's going to cost you money in the long run. Then you need your bank prop management. So that's figuring out how much to stake on each game. What I do, set the amount of money that you're going to use to bet with, break it into 100 equal units, and then stake between 1 to 2 units on each bet, and never bet more than that. If you do that consistently, then that will remove a lot of any stress, worry about losing, and then also chasing when you do have losing bets. That takes it away because you're following proper bankroll management. And then the third part is your mindset of how you're approaching it. If you're trying to approach it like, I'm going to get rich quick, then it's going to result in you losing money, and quite like that's the downfall of so many people. But if you just approach it from a long-term mindset, focus on the months and years, and just keep collecting money over that period of time, then that's what's going to get you the overall results. I did record a couple of weeks ago a betting masterclass going through the strategies to turn your betting around, go from losing to winning, and that takes you through the strategies of how to do those things I just mentioned, and particularly choosing your bets as well. So definitely, if you haven't watched that, check it out. I'll put the link for that video in the description. But I created this channel to help more people make money betting on sports. So hopefully what I'm sharing in this videos is giving you those thoughts and ideas of how you can approach it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any more videos throughout the rest of the season. And definitely put in the comments the bets you're considering or you have placed for the upcoming rounds. And this week, the NRL try scorer video. Last week, we had another really good week with the try scorers. That video will be out on Thursday, probably early Thursday morning. So make sure you don't miss that one. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.